But anyway, thanks for being here. Great to see you. I'm so happy to be doing the show once again. So you can see I've got something different going on. So I'm going to be using this new tool so I can show you the website, so I can make it more interactive, and so we can have a lot of cool stuff going on as we do the show. And we have a lot of really cool stuff, so especially UFO news. I'm going to go over UFO news, and we'll go over each story a little bit, go over some stuff that I've written. But before we do that, I want to show you what's surrounding me. I'm being surrounded by stuff. What is all this stuff? So this is really fun. So this is something I learned from the kids. So I'm looking at all the different type of streaming tools that are out there, and here is what we have. So like donations. So kids, streaming is huge. So there's something called Twitch that you all may be aware of. So kids are out there streaming a lot and making money. And essentially what they're doing is they're playing video games. And that's what people can watch. And when they're doing this, you can give them tips. So actually, if you're in the chat right now, you can see at the bottom of the chat, there's a little $ button. What that is when you click it, if you're in the chat in YouTube, that will allow you to give me a tip. Give me $1 or $2 or $3 or whatever you want to do, or 10 or 100, 500, 600, whatever you want to do. And that tip, when you tip me on the YouTube, will show up right here. It'll go bing, and your name will pop up there. So it's really fun. And then also, if you look down in the description of the show, you'll see a link for tips with a $. Because in this system, you can also tip. And if you tip there, a little ding will happen here so we can see if people are tipping. Now, if you don't want to tip, I understand. I'm not forcing anybody to tip, but that's up to you. It's what the kids do, and it's kind of fun, If you like what I'm doing, you're like, that's worth $100. No, I'm kidding. $1 or $2 is just fine. But that's what that's for, so that's really cool. And then down here, as people, tip, or as I get subscribers on the YouTube page, this will light up. And in fact, if I get a subscriber, so just do this. Let's say there's somebody in the chat right now or watching the show, and you're not a current subscriber to openminds.tv, the YouTube page. Do that right now, and we will see a cool little thing happen down here. Okay, now. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. So watch, as the show goes on, if someone subscribes to the show, then you'll see what happens down there. So it's fun. It's just a lot of fun, some cool stuff to play with and to have fun with as we go along on our ride. Now, some of you don't want to. You're like, what am I going to give you $1 for if you're not doing anything? So let me show you something else you can do. But this is important. This is also something that we're going to look at so you can see where you can get some more information. So check this out. Let me get this up here. So Patreon. So a lot of you have heard of Patreon, I'm sure, but I've got this new Patreon site up. And what this allows people like me to do is to, make money off of doing our podcasts and live events and stuff like that. And that allows us to keep doing it. So I'm sure if you listen to podcasts, you've heard about this. But what this allows me to do is tell you a bit about myself and what I'm going to be doing, but also allow me to give people who do patronize something special. So let me go over these tier levels. So if you come on here, you can become a patron. At this level, it's only $1, and that's $1 a month. And you'll be part of the my Patreon squad. These are bad MFers, is people who are on Patreon squad. So what this is going to get you, it'll get you a shout out on the podcast and the live video. You'll be part of the crew, and you'll get access to exclusive content. You'll also get a $10 discount on the Open Minds products on our Teespring store. Let me show you that real quick. So this Teespring store, you'll see links to it at the bottom of the screen, but I've got this up. So if you want to buy some OpenMinds.tv branded products, you'll see we've got tons of different T-shirts. We got a couple different styles here. Some pink for the girls. Girls love these what are they? Tank tops. Yeah, duh. Girls love these tank tops, so we got the tank top. Everybody loves, those. And if you're in a colder climate, you can get some long sleeves. But anyway, some T-shirts and stuff there. And so if you're at this level, you'll get a 10% discount there. What about the exclusive content? What are you talking about, exclusive content? Well, check it out, dudes. Check it out now, my phone. So, brother, I've got these 2 pieces of exclusive content. This is a video. Some of you may know on YouTube, I've got an interview with Stanton Friedman. Stanton Friedman is the godfather of ufology and Roswell, just because he's alive mostly. There are older people who have done more or other UFO stuff to get it, started. He was a kid. When he was younger, there were already UFO researchers, of course, but he is essentially the discovery of the Roswell case. Not many people realize that, back in July 1947, when the Roswell event took place, of course, it got in the news and it became a big story. And then the next day, the Air Force said, "Oh no, that was nothing," and so the story disappeared. It wasn't really covered in mainstream ufology. Some people argue, well, there were a couple people who said something, but you know what? There were, but these were real obscure. They were very small mentions about these news stories. It wasn't really a big story. Not until the late 70s when Stanton Friedman ran across Jesse Marcel, who was the first officer on the scene at this alleged crash, and then he interviewed him and interviewed others. And so Stanton is the guy who got Roswell out there. Well, he's retiring, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go back to me so you can, just in case a little video pops up. But he's retiring. And there's an annual festival in Roswell. I've been involved with it for probably 10 years or so. And this was the last one that Stanton will be at. So you saw me talk about that in the interview on my YouTube video and some other stuff. But what we have here are videos I have not released yet. So there was a panel at the end of the Roswell Festival with a bunch of the researchers, and I recorded a couple pieces of that. The end. So at the end, somebody asked, "Stanton, what do you have to say? Now that this is your last panel, what do you got to tell people?" And so that's what this video is. It's just a couple minutes. And then this one is him after he said those things. He got a standing ovation, and so he thanked everybody and said some words which were really cute and funny and cool. And you could see those here, but only if you're on the Patreon squad. But that's only $1. Come on. This is really probably a preview, because one of the things I am with me is that I love to share information. And I hate for people not to be able to see it. So I don't like paywalls or stuff being behind. But these are previews. So essentially what I'll do this as time goes on too is I'll post stuff there, even if I don't know what to do with it yet. Knowing that most likely at some point in the future, I will use that material somewhere, somehow, because I want to get all the information out, right? So, but I'll pop stuff up here, and I'll also pop up some behind the scenes. So, for instance, I'm going to a conference in just a few weeks at Devil's Tower. There's going to be some cool people there. I'll post some behind the scenes of what we're doing out there, and maybe some of the guys being funny and goofballs, because we're all goofballs. So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff. That's kind of the exclusive content type of stuff you're going to get here. Otherwise, it's still a great page for people because everything that I'm doing, I put up here. So let's take a look at that. Suggestions. UFO headlines. So we're going to go over these UFO headlines in just a minute, but I'll review some of the other stuff that I've got up here and other stuff that I'm doing. So I told you all I went to Comic-Con, and there was a Project Blue Book activation or exhibit, and I did a live stream as I walked through there, so you can come here and watch that. Also, as part of that exhibit, they did this thing where they sketched UFO sightings for us, so you can come watch that here. Oh, this is Danny. So if you've been to the UFO Congress, you probably know Goofy Danny with the space outfit and everything. He does our He does all kinds of different stuff. This guy's extremely talented, really, really cool. But him and his buddy were part of the sci-fi band at Comic-Con. And I didn't even know that. we were at having a burger and we see the Sci-Fi go by, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's cool. Sci-Fi has a band over here. And then I go to Instagram, and sure enough, there's Danny, and I'm like, oh my god. So I went to look for him, and we found him, and they were playing some music, and really cool stuff here. Great video, so check that out. But some other stuff I'm doing. Okay, so here's one of the stories I wrote this week on Orville. And I got an interview with Jason Clark. And Jason Clark is one of the producers for Orville. And Orville, as you can see here, is kind of a Star Trek kind of show, but it's with Seth MacFarlane. And Seth MacFarlane, of course, is the guy who makes Family Guy. He's a funny guy. He's a comedian and everything. And this guy, Jason Clark, is a producer with Seth MacFarlane. And I got to interview him at Comic-Con, and I'm a fan. Karen and I are both fans of the Orville, so I asked him about it. And one thing, if you've seen it, and I'd love to see what you guys think. In fact, let me open up the chat here so I could see your comments. But if you've seen the show, you'll know that it's kind of a weird mix of stuff. It's sci-fi, so it's like a real Star Trek-ish type of show that is serious at times and dramatic. But at the same time, it's got the really kind of edgy humor of Seth MacFarlane. So I think a lot of people have a hard time kind of getting used to it. But I think it's really good. And I asked Jason Clark, well, what do you think about this mix of this sci-fi and humor? And he made a great point. He's like, Shakespeare had a lot of humor in it. In the past, we've been humorous. So in the future, I'm sure we're going to be humorous as well. So Tim, he says he loves Orville too. Yeah, give it a shot if you haven't seen it. It's really, really cool stuff. What is Martin taking over the chat here? Everybody's like, oh my gosh, Martin's in the chat. He's in Russia. Funny. You're in Russia, he says. I'm getting some buffering. You're in Russia, for God's sakes. My goodness. Okay, so that's what that story is. Let's look at a couple other... Wrong one. Here we go. Things that are going on this week. Okay, we'll talk about this in just a second, the last Open Minds radio show. But one more story, I guess, from this week. Okay, two more. Is lunar water ice discovered on the moon. This is actually pretty cool. So we've known there's ice on the moon, but we're not sure what it was made up of. And there's a study where actually they used the data from a 2016 Indian satellite that was able to get some data, more data. They were able to analyze it and prove that it's water. This is a big deal for a couple reasons. One, it's a big deal, of course, because if we go to Mars, then there's going to be water there that we can humans can use to drink, but they use water for many other things. You can use it to break it down, to make gases, and do a lot of different things that can help you if you've got a base on the moon, something that Robert Bigelow wants to do, and he's already working on actually having a base on the moon. So he may be the first guy with a base on the moon. We don't know at this point, but having found water on the moon makes that easier. Here's another reason this is important, because it's like, well, why would we go to the moon? That's where we're going next. So the president has said that, it was the priority of NASA to go to Mars, among other things. At least for humans, that was the next place we were going to go, is Mars. Not anymore. Now the project is called Moon to Mars. So now the priority is to get to the moon. Why? Well, one of the big reasons we want to do that is because, we talked a little bit about this last time, China and Russia. So China and Russia have programs to go to the moon. They say they plan on having feet on the ground by 2030. So what does that mean? We need to get to the moon too. They do have plans already to send rovers and other things, but this new plan that NASA has is a bit more exciting than that even. So we're going to have this small space station, and it is very little, but it's going to be called the Gateway, and that's the first step. They want to build this little space station to orbit the moon. And that will be like a stepping stone then to Mars or for humans on the moon. So that is a project that's on the board. They want to have that rolling by the 2020s. And then we'll do the next step, of course, which is a base on the moon. And so this is now a new space race. We're all racing to get to the moon. U.S., China, and Russia. So we'll see what happens and who gets there first. Bigelow, of course, like I mentioned, does have a plan for a base on the moon and has been working with NASA on that, so he may be part of it. He already is part of the orbiting satellite because that's one of the other things he wants to do. He builds these expandable habitats that are good for bases but also good for space stations. So he is competing with 12 other companies to be the company that builds that space station that orbits the moon, the Gateway. So we haven't decided who's going to do that yet. Lockheed Martin just came up with their design, which is a very small little cabin. The advantage to at least some of the ideas that Bigelow has proposed are much bigger structures because he's able to, of course, transport something small that can inflate and be big. And he's had a couple prototypes orbiting the planet already, and he's got a module on the International Space Station that is also working. So it's a proven technology, so he may be the first to get there. We'll see. Let's see, a couple other things. Finally, this is my interview from Comic-Con. So I interviewed Dee. I can't remember her last name, but she's a showrunner for the Mars television show for National Geographic. You may remember, because I've been bragging about this, I got to go do a talk at Comic-Con for National Geographic about Mars, and it was for this event. That's why I went to Hungary. If some of you knew, I went to Hungary to be on the set for the second season of this television show. It is an awesome show. And what's so great about the show is that it is chronicling, it's kind of half drama and half documentary. So they have real people, Elon Musk and others, talking about this real goal to get people to Mars. And then you have this dramatized where these people do go to Mars. And so you have them kind of speculating over, what it would be like to be on Mars and to do stuff on Mars. So it's really an interesting, cool program. So that's some of the stuff I've been writing about. And, of course, that's Last UFO Live. So as I post stuff, you'll be able to get my stories and videos here on the Patreon site. It's another area. Of course, if you follow me on social media, you can see it all there as well. And just for $1 or more, you can be a member. Now, Ryan Sprague, some of you may know him, but I have 2 followers already, and Ryan's one of them. He's on Patreon, so go give money to him. I do. And because he's got a great show and everything, too. In fact, he'll probably be my next guest on Open Mind UFO Radio. Also, I have another patron who it joined at a higher tier level. Thank you so much. I wrote his name down. Let's see if I can find it. Just because I have to do the shout-out, right? I said I'd do shout-outs. So, Joseph Haylett rocks. I want you guys to see me so you can see me do the rocks thing. Joseph Haylett rocks. So thank you so much for being a patron. Of course, Ryan as well. But let me show you these higher levels real quick before we go away from this. The higher levels, the next level is intergalactic planetary. You'll get a 20% discount on the Teespring clothes. And then the next one is planetary intergalactic. Planetary intergalactic. And this is a VIP. And I should show you the browser, right? And this is the VIP level, and you'll get 25% off. But even more. Look at this. I'm going to read this to you. You will also get an invitation to our first meeting with an extraterrestrial civilization. I need to fix the grammar there. I often get info on cool upcoming events. If I should get the heads up regarding the first diplomatic meeting with aliens, and I have the ability to get you an invite, consider it done. So that's pretty cool, right? $10 a month is kind of a lot, so I understand. This is for my rich patrons out there, or the people who just think I'm pretty cool, I guess. But I'll also, be giving other cool stuff. Like, for instance, I didn't get it ready, but I've got this really cool National Geographic thing over here. I'll point. It's over there, and it's out of my reach, and I'm afraid I'll knock something. Okay, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to show you. All right, here it is. So this is something National Geographic gave me for the TV show One Strange Rock. I'm not sure if you guys saw that TV show One Strange Rock. But National Geographic sends me cool stuff because they love me. And this is some kind of like tool where these rocks and stuff, you put water in here, you drink the water, and these rocks make the water special or something. And so this is like a one of a kind. But I've got too much stuff. You know, these places, these press people send me stuff all the time. In fact, I'll show you some other stuff I got in just a second that's UFO related. So anyway, I'm going to give this away. So I'll give you specifics, but essentially those higher level patrons, the intergalactic or planetary intergalactic, I'm going to choose in just a couple weeks one of those people randomly, and you'll get this. It kind of looks like a space module itself. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. So, yeah, pretty cool. What else have I gotten sent? I'll do other giveaways too, but that's going to be the first one, that thing, which is really cool. I love it. I've had it for a while. I didn't want to give it up, but I've just got too much junk. I get yelled at practically every day for having too much junk over here. Look at some other stuff I got. Oh my gosh. These things are heavy as heck. Ay, ay, ay. But they will be of interest to you. Hey, look, somebody subscribed to the channel. And there's a little dancing shark. Isn't that cool? That's fun, isn't it? So here's what I got. I got some books. People send me books to review, and these are all cool books. So I do want to tell you about them. I don't even get around to reviewing very many, but I figure at least I can talk about them here and show them to you guys. This looks really good. So this is the latest book by Brad Steiger and Sherry Hansen Steiger. Brad Steiger, of course, a famous paranormal researcher. And it's called Haunted: Malevolent Ghosts, Night Terrors, and Threatening Phantoms. Sounds really, really cool. Now, I'm guessing that this book, typically when they send me these books, they're not published yet. So I get a preview. And it looks like this one will be out in September. So just next month, you'll be able to get this book. I'm not sure. Maybe you can even. But that looks really good. Ghost book. I like ghost stuff. I also got Tom DeLonge's latest book. So this is from Tom DeLonge and A.J. Hartley, A Fire Within. Now, this is one of his fiction books, Secret Machines. But as it says here, this is a novel based on actual events. I think this is kind of interesting too. How they describe the authors. Tom DeLonge, award-winning creator and accomplished researcher who made history by releasing the first official military footage of a UFO that has been through the U.S. government declassification review process. And the New York Times bestselling author A.J. Hartley continue their thrilling Secret Machines saga of archaeological adventure, government conspiracy, historical mystery, and unimaginable technology with Secret Machines Book 2, A Fire Within. So this looks really good. I haven't looked at it yet, but I will by next week, and I'll give you guys a little heads up on what it's about and everything. So interesting. And by the way, you know, some people may say, oh, he's full of it, because he says here he released the first official military footage of a UFO. That's still alleged, so they haven't necessarily proven that. I believe him, personally, but the DOD, there has been one situation where a person has said, oh, somebody's trying to put bad stuff, but guess what? So someone's trying to put, some lewd crap in the chat, and luckily I have the ability to keep that from getting on there. So, yeah, I'm even going to kick this person. Put in timeout. Should I put him in timeout or kick him? Timeout or kick him if they're being, oh no, he's kind of being disruptive. Let's just get rid of him. Adios, muchacho. Okay, there we go. We kicked that dude. All right, sorry about that. I have to kick the bad dudes. Okay, and then this is another one. So this book, by the way, it's huge. Look at this thing. And it's heavy. Get a workout. But it's nothing compared to dun dun dun. Look at this thing is humongous. So this is a preview copy as well. This is Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Human Intelligence, Volume 1. Yeah, that's wild, right? This is put together by the editors Ray Hernandez, Dr. John Climo, and Dr. Rudy Shield. And some of you may know Rudy Shield. And this is from FREE, which is the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial and Extraordinary Experiences. So, some of you have heard me do some interviews with some of these guys that are part of FREE. So these are some guys doing research on alien abduction. It is really interesting. They're doing inventories. So essentially they're asking people who believe they've been abducted what they feel they've experienced, and then they've kind of put it together as part of their big study. But there's more than that in here. But my thing with that study is these are still mostly self-reported people. These are people who are saying they believe they've been abducted. That doesn't mean they've actually been abducted by aliens. And that's my argument, is that we're kind of getting an idea of what people who believe they've been abducted are believing that they experience. And I do believe there is value to that information, but it doesn't necessarily prove anything, unfortunately. But it's still, I think, very interesting that these PhDs are involved. They are important people, and these are credible people, and they found this information convincing enough or compelling enough that they believe something is going on here, which to me, gives credence to the idea that I have put forward before, that alien abduction is certainly something that is worth looking into. I don't know whether or not it's happening. Personally, that may frustrate some people, but I think it definitely is something to look into. Am I excited to see Blue Book? Somebody asked me. I just saw Blue Book. No, very excited. We'll talk about that probably in just a little bit here too. But let's look at something else. And now for something completely different. So those are some of the books. Let's go ahead and look into the news. Someone asked, we need a way to identify real abduction participants. Yeah, and the issue with that is it's pretty much impossible. Somebody asked me what time it is here. 6:34, just so you know. I mean, that's just a really tall task, because you would have to have some sort of physical evidence to prove that this is going on, and we don't have that at this point. But that's why I feel that we need, why it is an area that deserves more study. If there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who are claiming to have these experiences, at the very least it is some sort of psychological phenomena, and that we need to look in that to be able to diagnose these people and to be able to heal these people, or at least help them cope because they feel they've had traumatic experiences. And according to some of the therapists who research this stuff, they exhibit symptoms that are genuine, similar symptoms to PTSD, other PTSD victims. And so that, to me, means it's something that we need to look into. All right, so let's look at the news. So here's the website. If you haven't been there before, hopefully you have at openminds.tv. Just a couple of things to point out here, which is you've got the headlines right on top. Here's the link to the stickers. You can also, I've put a link out there to become a patron. Also, you can subscribe to our newsletter, which I would recommend. I try to send those out every other week, optimally. And during periods of time, I do that. But mostly it's been once a month, or I don't think I got one out in July because I was so dang busy all over the place. But also, you can come to articles, UFO resources. This is an extremely important document, the Rockefeller UFO briefing, something you can take a look at. We also have all of the APRO bulletins up, and you can find the radio show, and you can go to our YouTube. But in these articles, you can go to daily UFO headlines. So you see here on the front page, I've got all the latest headlines. But I think this is a great resource. If you go to this page, you're going to see all of these headlines. And they go back for months and months. They go back years. So you can see all of these headlines. And these are for the most part, mainstream stories on UFOs. Just to identify that there are a lot of UFO stories out there that the mainstream press is writing. But let's look at the most recent, and we'll do that. We could do it here, but we'll do it at the homepage. So this is a cool story. From the Far Side, reasons to believe aliens are real. This is from the Daily Galaxy, and this is important because the Daily Galaxy is mostly for astronomers, space scientists, people interested in space, but these are like the scientists, the hardcores, which of course are typically extremely skeptical when it comes to UFOs. However, in this story, reason to believe aliens are real, they start off with talking about this new Pentagon program. So, and what's interesting, and a lot of people do this, the Pentagon program, Elizondo and the people involved, Harry Reid, they never once talked about aliens. But this is sort of saying that, and you can see this here, the news that aliens might actually be visiting us regularly and recently continued, New York Times reporter team, didn't provoke terror about a coming space opera conflict, but something much more like the evangelical dream of the rapture the same liberals might have mocked as kooky right-wing escapism in the George Bush years. The truth is out there. I think this is a pretty verbose, but the point is that they're essentially saying that the situation, which to them, as they've interpreted it, is essentially saying that aliens may be visiting, has not really freaked people out. I think this is interesting because I do not interpret the Pentagon story as aliens are here. I interpret it the way Elizondo has framed it, and the others is that UFOs, there are unknown objects, that technology we cannot identify. That doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial, but because UFOs mean ETs to so many people, it makes sense that the general public would see this as, okay, maybe we are being visited by aliens, and even though they were told that and it became a big story, nobody's freaking out. That's really interesting. They're not making fun of, they're not even questioning this. They're taking it very seriously. Also, they talk about SETI and how SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, has been arguing that there are extraterrestrials out there. They go over the videos that were released with the Pentagon program that we were talking about a little bit. And actually, this is a summary of a story that came out in March on this page called Select All for New York Magazine. And it's a very interesting story. I think it's pretty good. And they've also got some links to some other headlines. But this was just put out yesterday on the Daily Galaxy. I think that's very, very significant. It demonstrates once again how the idea of UFOs has gone mainstream and it's not as taboo as it once was, even just months ago. Things have changed, people. This is an interesting story, a little bit kind of uncomfortable in that I am interviewed and quoted in this. This is a story from Westword. Westword, we have a similar website called Phoenix New Times here, and I think it's the same group like Village Voice. Most cities, big cities, have some sort of paper from them. In fact, Cheryl Costa writes a regular piece for one of their sister papers called the Syracuse New Times. But in Denver, it's called Westword as opposed to the Denver New Times. But this is about a lawsuit against Gaia. So some of you are probably familiar, well, probably a lot of you are familiar with Gaia. They used to be called Gaiam, and now they're called Gaia. And I didn't even know this till I read this story. It's because the people who owned Gaiam, which is a yoga, if you go to Target, just so you can see my face. If you go to Target or any sports store and you go buy yoga stuff, there's going to be stuff from a company called Gaiam there because that's the sort of things that they were producing, the clothes and everything for yoga. But they got into doing videos. And they got into some new agey type of stuff, so they started up this TV station. But what happened is the guy who owns Gaiam sold Gaiam to a different company, but he kept the video side, and he changed the name from Gaiam to Gaia. I thought he was changing the name from Gaiam to Gaia to separate, that people didn't get confused with the two, that Gaia is the TV thing, Gaiam was the clothes. But no, that's not the case. It's because he sold the company. Well, one of the videos he's been putting up there is from Patty Greer. She makes these crop circle documentaries, and she does these on her own. And I must say, she's really good at this. I mean, the production value on these videos is pretty damn good for just some person going off and doing this on her own. And there's a picture of her, and these are her awards. She's won 5 different EBE awards at the International UFO Congress. Some of these while I was there that I handed to her myself. And so, yeah, people like her videos. I don't necessarily agree with the premise in a lot of them, but she's been very upset with Gaia, and she feels that they essentially did not hold their end up to the bargain. In this article, they say, no, that's not the case. We didn't make as much money off of her videos as we thought, so we actually lost money. So there's been this big argument, and she has been really bashing Gaia. And accusing them of things such as using energy weapons against people, including her, like some sort of directed energy weapon. She said when she was in the airport, she got hit by one of these, and it made her sick for a long period of time. That is a really, really hard pill to swallow. Why her? Why, of all people, would they be trying to take her out? And nobody, I mean, not to be cruel, very few, nobody of importance takes this seriously anyway. So I don't understand why that would be necessary. Not only that, some of the aspects that she's talking about here, such as effects from crop circles that may make seeds last longer, was discovered by BLT, a group that researched crop circles. But this is not new information. They've had this information out there for a very, very long time. In fact, you can see some interviews on OpenMinds.tv with some of the people from BLT, or at least one person, Nancy Talbot, talking about this in depth. So it's not like it's that secret of information. Anyway, it goes on. She accused them. So they were asking me, what do I think? Well, here's what I said, people. I'm going to say it straight to your face. I respect both sides of the story. I respect Patty. I respect Gaia. But what I said was, I don't believe Gaia is using these weapons. They have accused people of using these weapons at the International UFO Congress, where I was there. I hosted the last event. There were a lot of people with flus. One gentleman did pass away, and he had pneumonia. And I've heard from his friends that they told him he should have gone to the doctor, and he didn't. He came to the conference, and he was sick, and it's very sad. Because I did know him, and it's unfortunate, but he passed away from pneumonia. But all of the other people there who were sick had the flu. It was going around during that period of time everywhere, not just at our conference. But a lot of people, including like Linda Howe, passed the flu. They recovered while they were there because it's a 5-day event. So nothing too weird there. But Alfred Weber and unfortunately these other people claim that these energy weapons were being used. Patty works with them. I don't know how the idea came about. I don't want to accuse her of putting it in his head, but it's interesting that these same weapons that Gaia supposedly has, and she was in these things where they were talking about the Congress getting zapped by. We didn't get zapped by nothing. So I told them that unfortunately Patty, some of her associates have said that these weapons that supposedly Gaia have been used at the Congress. And no, I don't believe Gaia has these weapons. I don't believe anybody used them against the Congress. It's unfortunately and kind of ridiculous, to be honest. And it's not nice. I mean, that could hurt my girlfriend's business, saying ridiculous junk like this just to get attention. At least, I'm not saying Patty did that to get attention, but certainly I think that was what was behind this goofy claim. So I said, yeah, this energy weapon thing, I think is pretty silly. At the same time, Gaia is not necessarily the most scientific or credible of sources either. For instance, this whole Peruvian mummy thing they keep putting forth as these Peruvian mummies being aliens. They're not. This hoaxing these Peruvian mummies to say that they're creatures from the dark or aliens has been going on for decades, literally decades. And every analysis has shown they're humans because they are humans. This is a very dry valley, and because of the nature of the conditions there, bodies are preserved very well. In fact, lately the Peruvians have been getting very upset that these Westerners are coming out and digging up their ancestors and then taking them back to America or wherever and calling them aliens. And they first of all, that could be illegal. And even some of the serious scientists who have researched this lately have been called into question by peers as to the ethics behind promoting such things. So, no, it's bad news, people. Bad news. Now, in full disclosure, Gaiam did sponsor the UFO Congress 1 year, and I don't have a beef with them. I don't think the UFO Congress does it at all, even though I don't agree with their research or their claims. I think that I don't see any deception there. I don't see anybody trying to do anything bad or cruel. I think everybody's just got their different perspectives, and as usual in this field, we all fight when we disagree. Unfortunate. So that's an interesting thing going on. This is a cool story. Oh, I was interviewed for this story too. This is written by Inverse, and this is actually a listener. Maybe he's watching the show. That would be really cool. Matthew Vellon. He wrote this story July 26, posted it then, and I hadn't mentioned it before because, like I said, July was really crazy, but I should have because this is a great story. You all know that I'm complaining about the tabloids all the time, the UK tabloids in particular, that are writing completely inaccurate story. Well, aliens could have been on the moon were headlines that was making news just a few weeks ago. Totally inaccurate. It was based off of what some scientists were saying. They said the moon could have been habitable at one point. They did not say it was it was inhabited at one point. But of course, the UK tabloids pushed it out that way. And this gentleman, Mike, wrote an excellent story about that or Matthew, I'm sorry. Matt wrote a great story about that, and he interviewed me, and I got the final quote. So you can see that here. Interesting. Okay. So next, someone was asking in the chat about the Project Blue Book television show. Yes, I'm very excited for it. It's going to be highly fictionalized. On our last Open Minds UFO Radio, we talked about that with an expert when it comes to J. Allen Hynek, who's going to be the main character there. Oh, I think I knocked this. Now you see my facade that I'm actually not in space. Dang it. I keep doing that, and then you guys know I'm not in outer space for real. But anyway, this story, the Project Blue Book television show, it's coming up. It looks great. I think it's going to be really good, but it is fictionalized. However, J. Allen Hynek was a real character. He was a real astronomer and scientist who worked with the Air Force investigating UFOs, and they're going to be covering real cases. What's really cool is that they're posting stories. Even though the television show is going to be fictionalized, they are posting these stories about the real events related to some of these more credible UFO cases. So this is one of them. This is about a scoutmaster who had a run-in with the UFO. The kids saw it too. So this is a really cool case. 1952, this scoutmaster, D.S. Sonny Desvergers, was the one who saw it. He was essentially, and this is kind of funny too, Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, who his book, I've got his book in almost all the comments. I have a section now on the YouTube videos of recommended books, and this is the #1 book, the book written by this guy who used to run the U.S. Air Force investigations. It's the #1 UFO book you have to have. It is a very important book. Even though he is a bit of a skeptic, that's a good thing because it's a serious investigation. It's full of the most compelling cases when it comes to Blue Book. I don't know how you can read that book without feeling that there's really something mysterious going on. But he said this case was the best hoax in UFO history, which is kind of funny because then it goes on to say that to this day it's still unsolved. Unsolved, he just said it was the biggest hoax. And then this line shows up in so many flippin' UFO stories from the mainstream media. And I'm sure that this writer, and I'm sorry, I think I talked to this guy before, but so cliche and so unoriginal. I'm sure they think, you know what, to be honest, I might have used that line before too, but probably only once if I did, because it's a fun one, but come on, it's used so much. Cue the appropriate X-Files music. Oh, you know what I should have had for the show? Some X-Files music ready to go, but I'm kind of glad I didn't. Anyway, this is another frustrating thing. Okay, sorry, another journalistic side note. This picture right here is an excellent picture of, here's Ruppelt. This is General Samford. This is, I forget, but these are all generals related to, in charge of Blue Book. I forget all the names. I've got it on Open Minds. I've got a worse version of this on Open Minds with the names of all of these people. This is the best version I've seen. Typically on the internet, you'll find a version like this from newspapers that is not very good at all. On Open Minds, I've got that version often. This is what makes me mad. This is an Air Force picture. The United States Air Force, we as taxpayers paid for this. Credit this gentleman's archive, Getty Images. So Getty Images is selling this picture, and I'll bet if you use that, they'll try to come after you, even though this is an Air Force picture. You could probably win if they sue and you get a lawyer, but who wants to get a lawyer and pay for a lawyer to sue over the picture? I wish I had the money to do it because I would do it just out of spite. So frustrating. Getty Images really chaps my hide. They do this often with public domain pictures and then try to claim them and sell them to people, which that should be illegal. They're public. It's very frustrating. Anyway, let's get back to Project Blue Book and this case. So in 1952, essentially, this guy, this Boy Scout leader, took the Boy Scouts out to the forest. They saw a light out in the forest. He got out. He went towards it. And then all of a sudden, this light came out of it towards him, and it blinded him. He stumbled out of the forest, where then he met some police officers and the kids. So it is a very interesting case. Here are pictures that he drew from this incident. The police had said they've never seen anyone as terrified as he was when he came out of the forest. Mysteriously, though, Ruppelt called the whole thing a hoax, which is interesting. Now, there is a crop circle researcher who got some grass samples that were taken at the time analyzed. He says that, and here's his name right here, Jeffrey Wilson. He says that the grass was burnt from the roots up, and there are other things from the grass that can't be explained, and that's why the author of this kind of concluded that this case is still not resolved. But yeah, that's an interesting case. But History Channel put up another one, and this is a really important one. The mysterious green fireballs that worried the government in 1948. In 1948, there were a lot of green fireballs seen, especially around New Mexico. That was scary because, that's where the atom bomb was built. That is where lots of testing was going on with high-tech equipment and everything. And so the scientists began to research the situation. He said they were like meteorites, but they weren't. They shouldn't have been that color. Sometimes they did some weird things. His name was Dr. Lincoln LaPaz. That was his name. What's interesting about this is that Life magazine, and this story doesn't go into it, so this is a side note for you all. Life magazine in the early 50s did a story about UFOs where they talked about how it was a credible mystery that the Air Force was trying to cover up, and they interviewed a couple of scientists. One of those was Claude Tombaugh, the guy who discovered Pluto, and he told them UFOs are real, I've seen one, and told him a story about a UFO. They also interviewed Dr. Lincoln LaPaz, who said, I investigated these green meteorites and I don't know what they are. I think there's something more mysterious than and possibly coming from another civilization. In fact, this story does get into how LaPaz and his group talked to Blue Book. Someone brought up the possibility of extraterrestrials, and they were really excited because they had a theory that extraterrestrials are sending probes here, and that's what the green fireballs were. In that Life article, there was also, they said they talked to an anonymous scientist who is very well respected, who had his own UFO sighting, and the article talked about the UFO sighting, but the scientist was anonymous in this article. It turns out that Dr. Lincoln LaPaz was this scientist. He just didn't want to go on the record with this sighting. Very interesting stuff. So the green fireball phenomena is really interesting. They go on to say that another scientist has said that he believes that the green fireballs were most likely ball lightning, and which is a phenomena that is not well understood. It is documented but not well understood even to this day. He goes on to say he does believe UFOs are real, but he doubts they're aliens. They're probably other things. But ball lightning, certainly, as far as I know, is typically something that is close to the ground. From what I understand, I think they believe it's due to like tectonic shifts or landmass rubbing against each other, causing friction, but not things that are way up in the air that look like meteorites. But that's what this story is. So very, very interesting stories coming out of History Channel that are getting ready for the television show. I'm so excited for the show. Here's another story. So NBC has this new site, NBC News, called Mock, where they do science and news, and I love it because they're a really cool story. This is an interesting story. So the Cube satellites are a big deal right now. And you may remember there was a story where there's this group that wanted to send one up to look for UFOs, and they got funded. So hopefully they'll do that. Sometime I'll have to catch up with those guys and see what's up, because I don't think they've launched anything yet. But essentially what this guy is doing, and what a Cube satellite is a small satellite, very small, just, like a foot by in diameter, something like that, a square foot. And you can put whatever you want in there, and then for only a few $1,000s, you can get that put in space. Now, these things are put in a low orbit, so they're only in space for a few months before falling into the Earth's atmosphere and burning up. But what this artist has done, he has created these giant balloons. So he's going to put a giant balloon in one of these CubeSats. When it gets up there, it'll inflate, and then we will have an artificial star that's going to be floating around the planet for 3 months. And he is actually doing this. So he's created it. We'll be able to see it, like it says, every 94 minutes. He raised $76,000 on a Kickstarter to do it. I don't remember when he's doing it, and I can't see the date in here right now. But really kind of interesting. So there's going to be this giant thing floating around the planet, this fake star. So we'll see it crossing the sky. It ought to be pretty cool, and no doubt it's going to cause very many UFO reports. Lunar water on ice. I already talked about that. Orville Season 2. We just talked about that too. And then finally, here's a story. So I told you about Cheryl Costa. She writes for Syracuse New Times. She won the UFO Researcher of the Year award at the last UFO Congress because she wrote a book about UFO sighting reports, and she hustled, man. She got the New York Times to write about it, the LA Times, Washington Post. She did a great job for awareness for UFOs and to show that people are reporting them much, much, much more frequently than the general public realizes. So that's why she won the award. But she writes a weekly column here, so I'll be covering it probably every week, what she wrote about, last. And her last story was May the Space Force Be With You. Why New Initiative Makes Sense. Essentially, what her story is very similar to what we had already talked about in that. I'm going to come talk to you guys face to face. Hi, guys. So, is that, over time, China and Russia have got a lot of space vehicles out there. Now, other countries do as well. We don't know what they're doing out there. What if they're sending weapons up there? We've already accused the Russians of sending weapons up there. So if they're going to try to attack our satellites or something like that, then we have to have something out there to make sure that we can protect our satellites. This has been a concern ever since Sputnik. Hey, they've got something out there. What if they're going to try to do bad stuff to us? So that's what the Space Force is all about. However, what she doesn't cover in this article, but I did in mine, in fact, we've been seeing, probably when you're watching the browser, you saw this picture coming up. That's my Space Force article. Dang it, you friggin' frack. So, will new Space Force combat aliens? And the image I used was Galagala, where, we're fighting aliens. So, very humorous and witty of me to use this picture, I think. But my point being that one thing that I put in there and argued is that, which is an argument that some people are making in the military, and you may remember I held up and I still got it right here. We already have a Space Force, and it's called Air Force Space Command. And I don't know who came up with this idea to use this term Space Force, but Mike Pence recently talked about creating this Space Force. And what he was talking about was calling it the U.S. Space Command. And what is it? It's this group. So essentially, Space Command is currently under the Air Force. So we have been doing all of this. But they feel that the Air Force isn't spending enough on this project. Plus, other government agencies also have space defense efforts going on, or projects. And so they want to condense all this and have a branch of the military that focuses on all of this. And a lot of this doesn't necessarily have to do with weapons in space, but weapons right here on Earth we can use against satellites. And one of the biggest concerns is that in 2007, China did this. China launched a missile and blew up one of their satellites, demonstrating they can take out satellites if they have to. It was a big concern because now all those pieces are up there floating around, and they can hurt astronauts, let alone all the expensive equipment up there. But that's the deal, is that there's also ground weapons, not just space-based weapons they're talking about here. So we already have one. So that's what people are arguing, that it would be too expensive to create another branch of the military and try to bring all these projects together in a new branch. I think one of the other concerns is Air Force isn't going to want to give away everything. Neither is the Navy. They have their own space defense initiatives. None of these branches of the government are going to want to give anything away, nor will they necessarily have to. They'll probably be able to justify continuing some of their projects under their own banner, which would mean there would be a lot of redundancy. So is it going to happen? I don't know. But that's what her article was about. So really interesting stuff. But what I think is good about her article is that it's clarifying. A lot of people are making fun of this whole Space Force stuff, but there is some real information behind it. Now, I will admit that the president and the White House really hasn't framed this or provided any of this background information. So the media or others are just kind of using this very little information to kind of talk about this topic, and not a lot of people are doing the thorough research, which really journalists should do. That's why luckily Cheryl did, and there have been a few other outlets that have done some deep research to say, here's the background. There is a legitimate thing. It's not just all total silliness. But a lot of journalists are out there, not taking the effort to do that, and just kind of using that surface Space Force type of stuff. But even the term Space Force doesn't really help. Maybe if they had originally used, we're creating a U.S. Space Command, I don't know if that would have been any better. But it certainly would have been better if they would have said, this is a precursor. Other efforts such as Ronald Reagan tried to create the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was dubbed Star Wars, which is a similar sort of thing. They could have said this demonstrated this whole thing has history, to try to keep from the kind of giggle factor from happening, but they didn't do that, and so they're being inundated by people making fun of this whole Space Force concept. So I don't know if it'll happen, but either way, it is happening. We have a Space Force. We have a Space Command. There are no indications at this point that anything the president or Mike Pence are talking about has to do with UFOs or the Pentagon or anything like that. It has to do with defense against Chinese and Russians, like it usually does. So I guess finally, as we wrap up here, I want to talk about the last Open Minds UFO radio. So I had on Chris Cogswell. Chris Cogswell has a podcast called the Mad Scientist Podcast. He has a PhD in chemical engineering. He also has a bachelor's in philosophy, which I think is incredible. Pretty cool. But he's very frustrated. And I'm going to come over here and look at your comments too. Well, I should get off this screen. So there's Chris. I put together this picture with him in this vortex. I think that's kind of cool. But let me get over to me, and I'm going to look at your comments so I can address some of what you guys are talking about. Stephen Padilla says, Padilla says, you need to give shout outs to your chatters. Well, I can't watch the chat and also do these other things. I don't have enough screens to do that, so sorry. And there's someone talking about Sharknado. I don't know if she's watching the right video. Anyway, what Chris was saying is he's very frustrated. So we talked about the Atom Project. So To the Stars, Tom DeLonge, who's responsible for that book that I showed you earlier, they are in partnership with this group called Earth Tech to analyze, and they called it the Atom Project. And what they want to do is analyze materials that may come from UFOs. We talked about this more at length on the last show, But what Chris is kind of frustrated with is, I think he's frustrated that it gives people false hope, that it makes people think that we're going to be on the edge of finding materials like this or proving that there are aliens here or that there's technology that is beyond our own. But his concern is that, throughout the years and the research he's done, we've never been able to demonstrate that, and it's an extremely difficult task in the first place. All great points, I think, but he is very critical of these guys putting together the Atom Project because he feels that they've just gone about this all wrong. I don't know. I feel that there are definitely things they can do better. They can, speak to some of the concerns that at least some of the people in the UFO community have, such as, how can I guarantee that you're going to keep me in the loop if it's my material? How can I be sure that you're going to share this with the public and not just bury it? Some legitimate concerns, and I think that they do need to have some kind of public relations sort of aspect to this to make sure that doesn't happen. And I know these kind of people, these government people and these scientists, they don't think about that. They don't think of essentially the bedside manner that they need to have. And I think they should. Now, I believe Lou Elizondo does. He is a very personable person, but he's just one guy in an organization that's doing this. And I know I have expressed these concerns with him, and he understands them. So I think that can help them. What Chris feels is that they're being way too optimistic, I think, and they are being too suggestive when they put information out there. And he has a fear that they're going to have credibility issues, that the way they're going about this, that scientists aren't going to take them seriously. He may be right. I'm not sure. One of the things he does have right is that it's extremely hard to prove that something is been created by an extraterrestrial civilization. If you retrieve these materials, first of all, you have to demonstrate their technology that is beyond what could be made here. Well, that's one of the things you have to do. And you have to prove that it's something that was not made here. And that's really difficult to do because, let's say, for example, they do an analysis, like an isotopic analysis, and they find that the material they use is not from this planet. Well, some people could argue, well, you could have taken a meteorite or found this material in meteorites and then extracted it from there and created this thing. And that's why, so it's not really made from space. That's a good example, and that would be difficult to prove. So that's the difficulty. What I do feel, though, is that, and I think this is something that the entire UFO community doesn't get completely, is that the credibility level of the people involved with this project is very, very, very high. They have the ears of some very important people. One of the people involved with To the Stars was the deputy assistant to the director of intelligence. So that's a person that very many politicians relied on. And when this person goes to brief them, then they have all ears are on them, and they are the source of credibility. They are the go-to source. So most of these individuals, or a lot of these individuals, are at that level. So that is why they are people who can get scientists and others to listen and pay attention more so than your average scientists out there. So that makes me a little more hopeful. But again, kind of like Chris, I do feel that this sort of stuff is hard to come by. It's not like you can find anomalous material willy-nilly here and there. And at least for myself, someone who's been in this for maybe 20 years or something, the materials from historically in the past and that people feel they come across on a regular basis just don't pan out. They don't turn out to be anomalous at all. But I'll tell people this, I do have some inroads with these people. If you feel you really do have something anomalous material, you have some sort of evidence to show that you do, and you want my help in negotiations or helping to get it analyzed, I'll help you out with that. And I think that the services that these guys are offering is extraordinary. We haven't had somewhere to go to get this sort of analysis paid for and done before. And so having that available is really important. And who knows? They have really great resources themselves. They have the whole entire military was reporting cases to Elizondo. So they may have people in the military who have gotten pieces and maybe held on to them and didn't turn them in or otherwise, or people who know people who know people. Maybe they will get some material. Maybe it is more abundant than anybody expects. Who knows? But they have the resources to figure this out. So I wish them the best. Hopefully they make something happen. So Osvaldo says, most of the criticism of DeLong and To the Stars is haters hating. And you know what? I agree with that. We're such big haters. I mean, there are the Bob Bigelow haters. Most of the things he is accused of are completely inaccurate. I know because I was there for very much of it. And most of it is in roots their interface with MUFON. And I literally was their spokesperson for MUFON when that project happened. So I know, these are people whose hearts are in the right place. They are people who believe this is a real phenomena. They want to figure out answers, and they ultimately want to share this information with the public. Most people in this field are like that. Patty Greer and Gaia are like that. I mean, they're not setting out to trick and fool people. They're trying to figure stuff out. And along the way, sometimes they believe stuff that they can't prove. And when you push that sort of thing forth, then you can cause credibility issues, or at least your information can fall on deaf ears when you really want it to be taken seriously. It's just a very, very high bar we have to meet when it comes to proof and to evidence. So, someone said, I don't understand why someone would manufacture fake UFO evidence, but obviously it happens a lot. You know what? You have a really, really good point there. And it's one of the issues that I think a lot of people have in this field when you first get into it before you get jaded. Is that, and this used to happen to me, when people would claim some extraordinary things, you would wonder, why would someone make something up like that? That would not, be to their benefit. What advantage can they have? However, unfortunately, investigating many of these cases, it turns out the information is false. And so there are a lot of people creating fake stuff. For example, and I'm going to call you out right now, Secure Team 10 is hoaxing stuff. They have for a long time. Others on YouTube hoax stuff. Why would they want to do that? Because they're making tons of money on YouTube doing it. That's why. And so there are those motivations that are money related. And in fact, I think some of the people making the most in the New Age and the UFO field are the biggest charlatans, unfortunately. But in their defense, when people start making money, they see how and what makes money, and so they keep pushing that. For instance, We've got a couple stories at openminds.tv where they're kind of tongue in cheek because we're like, hey, look at this crazy story. And they're extremely popular, and people think that, and what can you do? The real wild, wild, wild stuff is what people like to see. And so people putting out wild stuff just for fun or hoaxing it are making money. That's the way it goes. What can you do? What can you do? Let's see. When is the To the Stars new videos coming out? Is there any news on that? Brian Flynn asked this, and to be honest, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Actually, well, no, I shouldn't say that. What I mean is that they have not talked about anything else coming out anytime soon. I mean, there are no dates. Supposedly, they have some more information. I have pushed them on, and others have pushed them on some of this material or some of this information. They say they have, but they have claimed that they either are not at liberty to share it, or they do not feel that it is their it would be appropriate for them to share it. And what do I mean by this? What they mean by this is essentially that this is stuff that is not just theirs, that there are other departments, governmental or military or otherwise, that either produce this material or are involved with this material, and that these third parties that are involved do not want this information released, or maybe are the parties that are really the people that should release it. And so, that's one of the hard parts. These guys aren't really whistleblowers. Elizondo's not a whistleblower. He is but he did take it upon himself to share information that the government essentially wasn't sharing themselves, and he felt it was important. So it's kind of in between whistleblower and just concerned citizen. And so we don't have any. So essentially, they don't want to upset their colleagues and everything. And so there's information I know they are trying to coax people into releasing because they feel the public needs it, but that has not been released yet. So currently, there are no timelines or slated releases that I am aware of or that they've talked about lately. I think the big news that they said they had a few weeks ago was this Atom Project, that they are going to be doing this investigation. I think that it just was big news for them, but at least when it came to the UFO community, they did not feel it was such big news. Let's see here. Let me make this a little smaller. Oh, it's getting kind of late already, so I should wrap this up. Any more questions real quick? I'll answer one or two more if you got one. Let me see. Lots of comments. This person says, will trust Elizondo until he gives me reason not to. I think that's, I've met him. He's a very good person. This has been very more traumatic and stressful for him than he expected. Much, much, much more, it seems. And I think that, to me, I think that what he's done is pretty extraordinary, and things have just kind of. He did it with not necessarily knowing what would happen, but knowing that he felt this information was important. Being here now, one interesting question would be for him, and I'll see if I can ask this. It would be interesting. Was it worth it? At this point, does he feel it was worth it? I don't know what his answer would be, to be completely honest, because I know this has been very traumatic and difficult. And there, of course, have been droves of people who have been very, very, very cruel online. But any of us that get information out, there are people that are total jerks to us. So what can you do? Is Lee Spiegel as handsome in person as he is in video? Well, that is a great question, Ryan. I think that he is a very attractive person. He's got a great smile. I love seeing Lee smile and laugh. He's a good buddy of mine. He would say no, that he is a very grotesque person. The reason I say that is because he hates photographs and pictures of himself. But yeah, I would think so. He's a great guy. I love everything about Lee. Did I see the new Bob Lazar documentary trailer? I have. It is by Jeremy Corbell, who is one of the few people who have gotten close to Bob Lazar. I am talked about this last time, a bit skeptical, and of course I have a lecture that I posted in the cards on the last video that shows that. I don't know what to make of all of that, but Jeremy Corbell is an excellent filmmaker, so I'm sure it's going to be really, really interesting. And I guess that, do I believe in UFOs and we're being visited at the present time? Oh, I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say I don't know. I love Jeremy Corbell's documentaries also. I do believe in UFOs and that there are unidentified flying objects. I do believe it is a genuine mystery, that there are very, very, very credible people and individuals and situations where objects have been caught on radar. And this has happened in the military ever since we began investigating UFOs. This is why I say Ruppelt's book is one of the most important books in this field, because if you read that book, there are cases that are very similar to cases we have now. The 1952 case in Washington, which is documented in Ruppelt's book, we've got a video on it too if you prefer videos at Open Minds. It's in our, if you go to Open Minds YouTube page, it's on the front under the featured videos, but I'll also put it in the cards. And by the way, cards are up here in the corner. There'll be an information button if you're watching, if you're not watching this live, because I don't have them up now. But essentially, there's a button up there, and a little thing will come out and say, "Watch this video," and then you push that button, and in the side here, there are videos and stuff there that you can watch while you're watching, or that are links to stuff while you're watching the videos. So I'll post that video, those videos, in the card, but that's why I think that Ruppelt's book is so important, because it shows that these anomalous events where objects are caught on radar going very fast, doing incredible maneuvers, jets are scrambled, they chase the objects, they can't catch them, they're outmaneuvered. This has been happening for decades. It happened to the Air Force during the Blue Book era, which is documented in their files and in Ruppelt's book very well. It's happening today. It happened to the Nimitz Carrier Strike Group in 2004. This has been going on for a long time. So there is a genuine mystery. What is that mystery? I think it is, and you know, people like Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek speak to this. Whenever it comes to science or investigations, you don't want to get too hard set on one answer until you know. You want to try not to bias yourself or shade the way you interpret or see the data. You've got to follow the data. The data may show that this is something extraterrestrial. Who knows? But there's more and more talk about other dimensions. It may have to do with something to do with other dimensions. Who knows? I mean, there's, like Vallée, we don't know what we don't know. And that's an important concept. When it comes to science, we often make discoveries that we never could have imagined were the case. When we observe nature and we figure out why the mechanisms of why this happens or that happens, we find the answers are something we never could have imagined. So the answer could be something we can't even conceive of at this time. So who knows is what I'm saying. But it is a great have I read Behold the Pale Horse by William Cooper? I did, and I was so into it. I mean, I heard so much about it. I was so excited. I read it, and I was so disappointed, especially after I did more research. It's the ravings of a madman, if you ask me. The Expanse is an excellent show. Somebody said something about The Expanse. I only saw like the first season, but I definitely highly recommend it, because it's about if we had, you know, a civil people on Mars, like Elon Musk wants to do by 2024, have people on Mars, and we have a mining colony like on an asteroid or on asteroids, which is also in the works. What are the politics like, and people fighting back and forth, and the effects on the human body? If someone's born in Mars, they will never be able to come to Earth. Their body's not going to be able to handle the gravity unless somehow we were able to compensate. So, yeah, The Expanse takes all this into consideration, and it's some of that smart sci-fi that's going to be important for the future, because it brings up these issues that we have to think about if we're really going to go to space. Same with the Mars television show on National Geographic. If you haven't seen it, watch it, because it is Expanse-like in that it brings up those issues. But what's also cool is that it also has this documentary aspect where you have these people, scientists and experts, talking to those points as well. So really, really, really good stuff. So to wrap this all up, thank you all so much for being here. I'll put the little end thing up. This is cool too. So I should describe this. Okay, I'm going to make this too long. But so this little screen, so like this, I'm going to go back to my main overlay because I got just a little more to say, which is that, so all of this I discovered, I think you guys will find this interesting, is that I talked about it a little earlier. Gamers, kids are playing games, streaming it all day long, and then other kids are watching this. And that's so there are tons of kids doing what I'm doing right now, except for they're playing games. But sometimes they don't play games, especially these cute girls will get all of these followers, and then people will ask them to do stuff like say hi or do this, and not bad stuff, because you can't do bad stuff on YouTube. So not bad stuff. But and then pay them money. I've watched these videos where they'll pay like these girls $100, $200 just to say hi or whatever. So it's this weird thing that's going on. But anyway, so that's what this is all about. And then, that's how they pay. They give money on the Snapchat or on the tips thing. Like I said, there's a link to give the tips on the bottom. And so that's where all this technology, why it was built. So it's really interesting, and it's kind of fun because, as you can see, it makes this fun kind of live streaming environment that we can take advantage of, where I can do all of these cool things. And it makes this video more fun, I think. And thank you to Bill Couch for subscribing to Open Minds TV. I hope you like it. So a lot of fun. So what is this? I just because I like to, well, that's what I do. That's why I'm in journalism. I like to share information. So this is my end screen. And if you're watching on video and not on the live stream, you'll see over here that there will be some videos that it'll recommend for you to watch. You've probably seen this if you've watched YouTube. And then right here down below me, you can subscribe to our page, which I hope you do. So watch our videos, subscribe to our page. One more thing when it comes to the money thing is that we love to provide a lot of information for free. We've got so many videos on YouTube here that you can watch at no charge. You've got OpenMinds.tv or my stories at Den of Geek, all of which you can see on Patreon or my Facebook or any of our social media sites that we provide for free. And so any donation that you can give is very helpful. But if you don't want to donate, and I don't want you to necessarily donate, buy t-shirts. Right down here, there's t-shirts or other things. In fact, you'll notice there are links in our videos to Amazon products. If you want to buy a book, let's say you want to buy Drew Pelt's book, well, go to the link down there and buy it from there, and that'll also help us out. So that way you're not spending any extra money, but you're still helping us out. And because I love getting this information out, and I want to continue to be able to do it. So help me help you. Anyway, thank you very much for watching UFOs Seriously. And it's a serious topic. I treat the topic seriously, but I don't treat myself seriously, and I'm kind of a goofball, and hopefully that makes this more entertaining as well. But I want to thank you all so much for being here. Be sure to stay tuned. We'll have another Open Minds Radio podcast coming up in another couple of days. We will have more stories coming out. Space tourism. When will we be able to actually pay for a ticket to go to space? Well, I did a bunch of research on that on a series that's coming out on Den of Geek. Probably be up by the next time that we talk, and I'll tell you all about that. This is really exciting and interesting stuff. A lot of really cool stuff coming up. All right, I better say goodbye. Adios, muchachos.